Welcome to Alaska Weather. This is Holloway with the National Weather Service for January 20th, 2023. A couple of options for you. 1-800 number gets you into a phone menu system and out on the World Wide Web at weather.gov/Alaska. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email us. For the hazardous weather, watch warnings and advisories out. We have quite a bit going on today as compared to yesterday. So along the West Coast there, we have wind chill advisories for much of the West Coast this evening until 9 p.m. on Saturday. For much of the interior there, we have a winter weather advisory for snow and blowing snow, and that goes out till tonight through Saturday. We have a winter storm warning for the uplands area, 40-mile country, and this is out until through this evening and into midnight on Saturday. And lastly, down here in the Panhandle, down in Prince of Wales Island till midnight, we have a small craft advisory and also some high wind warning out for Prince of Wales Island, and that's for gusts for between 40 and 60 miles per hour. Taking a look at the satellite image, you can see a low moving into the Gulf of Alaska with a occluded front spreading out along the coastal areas, spreading some moderate to heavy rain along the Gulf Coast, anywhere between Kenai Peninsula and over into the Panhandle. Otherwise, some lingering snow showers and some fog along the Arctic coast. And we also see another system moving into the Aleutians out there, and AKwx with another occluded front out that way. So what does this look like on the surface map? 974 millibar low with an occluded front, as I described, with moderate rain, snow showers further inland along coastal mountains, along portions of the Panhandle, over across much of the southern mainland. Also some blowing and drifting snow out there, as we told you about those advisories out there on the West Coast, and also some fog along the Arctic coast. And lastly, the other low out there in the Aleutians, 976 millibar low with an occluded front. Mixed precipitation associated with that across much of the western and central Bering, and also western and central Aleutians. For tonight's weather, 981 millibar low now in the Gulf of Alaska with a weakening occluded front. Triple point, moderate to heavy rain associated with that system along the coastal areas. And again, snow showers further inland across the mountainous areas and into the interior and much of the Alaska range and a large portion of the southern mainland. Otherwise, we have that low out there in the Aleutians, 971 millibar low there with occluded front, driving a large area of mixed precipitation associated with that. For Saturday's weather, that low out there in the Aleutians moves into the Bering Sea, 973 millibar low approaching Russia there, and mixed precipitation through much of the Bering Sea into the Aleutians and into the Gulf of Alaska and northern Pacific there. Otherwise, weakening low out there in the Gulf of Alaska, now 1,003 millibars there with a weakening trough now. Still some lingering rain and snow showers across the Panhandle, and we also going to have some lingering snow showers across the interior with a weak trough that pushes through the interior, and that's also going to drive some snow showers through the Brooks Range and North Slope. For Sunday's weather, that next low showing up there just south of the Alaska Peninsula, 971 millibar low with the triple point in the Gulf of Alaska. Another round of moderate to heavy rain along the coastal areas. Snow showers once again expected across portions of the Panhandle into the southern mainland, out into the Bering Sea, and some mixed precipitation across much of the Aleutians and southern Bering Sea, and that stretches across back into portions of the northern Gulf. Otherwise, some lingering snow showers across the eastern interior and North Slope. So what do we got for low temperatures Saturday morning? Looking at 40 there in Ketchikan, 41 Sitka, 39 in Juneau, 39 in Yakutat Valdez, 26, 23 in Anchorage. 23 in Talkeetna, 24 in Kodiak, minus 16 in McGrath, 23 in Talkeetna. High temperatures Saturday afternoon, looking at 41 there in Ketchikan, 42 in Sitka, 39 in Juneau, 42 in Haines, 40 in Yakutat, Valdez, 35, 28 in Anchorage, 30 in Homer, 31 in Kodiak, minus 9 in McGrath, 29 in Talkeetna. For low temperatures Sunday morning, looking at 36 in Sitka, 31 in Juneau, 30 in Haines, 26 in Yakutat, 21 in Valdez, 7 in Anchorage, 23 in Homer, 26 in Kodiak, minus 28 there in McGrath, and 1 in Talkeetna. For high temperatures Sunday afternoon, looking at 42 there in Ketchikan, 43 in Sitka, 35 in Juneau, 36 in Haines, 36 in Yakutat, 28 in Valdez, 26 in Anchorage, 21 in Talkeetna, 37 in Homer, 38 in Kodiak, minus 10 in McGrath, and 37 in King Salmon. Across the interior and North Slope, looking at minus 4 there in Fairbanks, minus 2 in Northway, 3 in Eagle, minus 15 in Fort Yukon, minus 8 in AKwx Pass, minus 12 in Utqiagvik, minus 17 in Point Hope, minus 24 in Nome, minus 23 in Galena, minus 10 in Tanana. For high temperatures Saturday afternoon, looking at 3 in Fairbanks, 7 in Northway, 7 in Eagle, 3 in Fort Yukon, minus 6 in AKwx Pass, 7 in Utqiagvik, minus 15 in Point Hope, minus 18 in Galena, minus 18 in Galena, minus 3 in Tanana. For low temperatures Sunday morning, looking at minus 29 there in Fairbanks, minus 18 in Northway, minus 14 in Eagle, minus 27 in Fort Yukon, minus 27 in AKwx Pass, minus 15 in Utqiagvik, minus 20 in Point Hope, minus 22 in Nome, minus 38 in Galena, and minus 35 in Tanana. For high temperatures Sunday afternoon, looking at minus 13 there in Fairbanks, minus 3 in Northway, minus 8 in Eagle, minus 22 in Fort Yukon, minus 23 in AKwx Pass, minus 11 in Utqiagvik, minus 12 in Point Hope, minus 4 in Nome, minus 25 in Galena, minus 19 in Tanana. For down through the southwest, Alaska Peninsula and Aleutians, looking at minus 29 there in Bethel, minus 24 in Antioch, minus 5 in Dillingham, Cold Bay 12, Dutch Harbor 28, 31 in Shemya, 17 in St. Paul. For high temperatures Saturday afternoon, looking at minus 5 for Bethel, minus 6 in Antioch, minus 14 in Immonik, 9 in Dillingham, 29 in Cold Bay, 35 in Dutch Harbor, 34 in Shemya, 26 in St. Paul. Then for low temperatures Sunday morning, looking at minus 19 in Immonik, minus 6 in Bethel, minus 9 in Antioch, 8 in Dillingham, 22 in Cold Bay, 31 in Dutch Harbor, 31 in Shemya, 20 in St. Paul. For high temperatures Sunday afternoon, looking at minus 4 in Immonik, 11 in Bethel, 13 in Antioch, 26 in Dillingham, 36 in Cold Bay, 40 in Dutch Harbor, 34 in Shemya, 31 in St. Paul. For the 6 to 10 day CPC temperature outlook for January 26th through January 30th, we're looking at a much above normal tilts across much of the southwest and into the Alaska Peninsula and into the Aleutians, and that extends well through much of the mainland with above normal temperatures expected again for the 6 to 10 temperature outlook from January 26th through January 23rd, and that also extends over into the Panhandle with less favorable conditions for above normal temperatures, but we are expecting that to be the case there. But again, much above normal temperatures, as you can see, with all the redness across much of the southwest and Alaska Peninsula. For the CPC 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook for January 26th through January 30th, looking at above normal tilts for precipitation across much of the west coast, but zeroing in on much of the west coast, basically from Kotzebue down to Bethel and portions of the interior, and above normal tilts for much of the rest of the mainland, and near normal conditions skirting across the Panhandle into the North Gulf Coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at aviation weather, starting with flying weather on Saturday morning, looking at a couple of low pressure systems, some out there in the Gulf of Alaska and another low pressure system out there in the Aleutians. Over the next couple of days, we'll be driving most of the weather. We'll be seeing that low currently Saturday morning there with IFR conditions in the northeast Gulf Coast, marginal conditions through the Panhandle, and IFR conditions in portions of the eastern interior, and marginal conditions up through the interior into the North Slope, also some marginal conditions down through much of the Bering Sea. And then for Saturday afternoon, as that low trough moves through the interior, some IFR conditions associated with that as it moves through the interior and also up into the North Slope Arctic coast there, and then some marginal conditions down across the Panhandle and lingering IFR conditions in the northeast Gulf Coast. Otherwise, pretty good flying weather expected through much of the mainland, down through southwest and south central. And again, with another low moving into the Aleutians, IFR conditions associated with that across the eastern and central Aleutians, again for Saturday afternoon. Then for Sunday morning, nice break through the interior and much of the mainland with VFR conditions most likely, and then IFR conditions through much of the Bering Sea and Aleutians over into the south side of the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island. And then some marginal conditions back over into the Panhandle and much of the Gulf. And then with the next low pressure system, another round of IFR conditions for the Gulf region over into the Panhandle and over into the Aleutians, with another system expected there for Sunday afternoon. Otherwise, some decent flying weather across much of the mainland and some lingering marginal conditions along the North Slope Arctic coast. For past conditions, went for marginal, decreasing the IFR conditions on Saturday, with again that trough moving through. Again, even better early in the morning, with VFR decreasing to IFR during the day on Saturday. Then for Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR early, then poking out to VFR conditions. Rainy, same kind of thing there. Windy, IFR decrease or improving to marginal for windy pass on Saturday. Isabel kept them in IFR during the day on Saturday. Mentasta IFR is there as well. Tanita IFR improving to marginal. Portage marginal improving to VFR conditions. And then for Chilkoot and White went for IFR conditions there on Saturday for the Panhandle. So freezing level Saturday morning, looking at surface freezing level coming across the western Aleutians into the Bering, over on the south side of Alaska Peninsula into Kodiak Island, up through Prince William Sound over into the Panhandle. Otherwise, elevated freezing levels in the Gulf of Alaska, and another 2,000 foot freezing level analyzed there in the southern end of the Panhandle. Otherwise, elevated freezing levels well south of the Alaska Peninsula. For icing conditions on Saturday, looking at isolated moderate across much of the Bering Sea, with 4,000 to 10,000 feet expected there, and areas of considerable moderate with that low pressure system moving there on Saturday. And then above 3,000 feet for most of the area on the eastern mainland down through the Panhandle, with areas of considerable moderate in some of those areas. And then for the jet stream on Saturday, we got a nice trough, ridge, trough kind of scenario. We have northerly winds up to anywhere between 105, 115, 130 cutting across the central mainland down through and into the Gulf of Alaska, 140 knot jet streak there. A little bit lighter winds as you get into the Panhandle. Otherwise, southerly winds coming into the Alaska Peninsula anywhere between 75 and 80 as the next system comes into that area. for 9,000-foot winds on Saturday. Low pressure out there in the western Bering Sea, driving southerly winds anywhere between 65 and 90, and then we get into the ridge, and then northerly winds coming down through the mainland, anywhere between 60 knots over the western mainland down into the Gulf of Alaska, up to 40 knots, 40 to 50, and across the Panhandle. And then for 3,000-foot winds, southerly flow across much of the Alaska Peninsula and Bering Sea, mostly light and variable across the mainland. And for turbulence on Saturday, looking at surface to 6,000 feet across the Panhandle, surface to 4,000 in Kodiak Island, southern Cook Inlet.
Plastic marine debris so common? We know there's trash in the ocean. Unfortunately, a lot of it is plastic. We find plastic everywhere, from the ocean floor to surface. The plastics are all shapes and sizes and all different types. We find plastics on beaches and also inside animals' stomachs or wrapped around their bodies. That's bad news for our ocean and the animals that live in it and near it. It's also bad news for us. A recent study from the University of Georgia estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic trash enters the ocean every year. That's like putting 5 bags filled with plastic on every foot of coastline in the world. That's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and it's there because, well, we put it there. The 5 most common items found during the International Coastal Cleanup are plastic cigarette butts, food wrappers, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, and plastic straws and drink stirrers. Notice anything in common with those? It's a lot of single-use, disposable plastic. It goes without saying, we produce too much waste. That waste ends up in the ocean when we litter or don't recycle. Plastic is an important part of our modern lives. We use it for a lot of good things, but we need to take responsibility for how much we use every day and where it goes when we're done with it. The 3 R's can help, and it's up to every single one of us to practice them. Reduce your use of disposable plastic. That's anything you use once and throw away. Just use less. Reuse disposable plastics when possible. A plastic bottle makes a great coin piggy bank or watering can. The possibilities are endless. Recycle anything that can be recycled so it stays out of landfills where trash can blow away. Ocean plastic is a huge problem that's only going to get worse. Unless we change our ways, we can do better for the ocean and for us. Why is plastic marine debris so common? We know there's trash in the ocean. Unfortunately, a lot of it is plastic. We find plastic everywhere, from the ocean floor to surface. The plastics are all shapes and sizes and all different types. We find plastics on beaches and also inside animals' stomachs or wrapped around their bodies. That's bad news for our ocean and the animals that live in it and near it. It's also bad news for us. A recent study from the University of Georgia estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic trash enters the ocean every year. That's like putting 5 bags filled with plastic on every foot of coastline in the world. That's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and it's there because, well, we put it there. The 5 most common items found during the International Coastal Cleanup are plastic cigarette butts, food wrappers, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, and plastic straws and drink stirrers. Notice anything in common with those? It's a lot of single-use, disposable plastic. It goes without saying, we produce too much waste. That waste ends up in the ocean when we litter or don't recycle. Plastic is an important part of our modern lives. We use it for a lot of good things, but we need to take responsibility for how much we use every day and where it goes when we're done with it. The 3 R's can help, and it's up to every single one of us to practice them. Reduce your use of disposable plastic. That's anything you use once and throw away. Just use less. Reuse reuse disposable plastics when possible. A plastic bottle makes a great coin piggy bank or watering can. The possibilities are endless. Recycle anything that can be recycled so it stays out of landfills where trash can blow away. Ocean plastic is a huge problem that's only going to get worse. Unless we change our ways, we can do better for the ocean and for us.
What is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? Well, first, let's talk about what it's not. It's not a floating island of trash like a garbage dump or a landfill. It's also not the only patch. They exist all throughout the ocean, and the Pacific Garbage Patch just happens to be the most famous. Garbage patches are large areas of marine debris concentration that are formed by rotating ocean currents called gyres, kind of like big whirlpools that suck things in. A garbage patch is made up of tiny plastic pieces called microplastics that are less than 5 millimeters long. It's more like pepper flakes swirling in a soup than something you can skim off the surface. You might come across some larger items like plastic bottles, but it's possible to sail through a garbage patch and not see anything. And they're a big problem for the ocean and us. People often ask why we can't just scoop up all the marine debris in the ocean. And the answer is, unfortunately, it's just not that simple. The first challenge is the sheer size of these garbage patches. They're huge. They're constantly moving with ocean currents. And there's debris from the ocean surface all the way down to the sea floor. Not to mention all the marine life we would disrupt if we tried to just scoop up debris. So what can we do? Well, the ultimate solution is prevention. And we need to keep that as our highest priority. We can reduce, reuse, and recycle to keep trash out of the ocean in the first place. And we can participate in things like shoreline cleanups. It's a lot easier to deal with debris before it gets to the ocean. Because until we stop marine debris at the source, we'll just be cleaning it up forever.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at the marine forecast, starting with the ice edge. Ice continues to grow south around St. Matthew Island and extending over into the Bristol Bay region with lower concentrations of ice around and ahead of the main ice pack. Also, some ice was noted in the Cook Inlet region. For Saturday's marine forecast for southeast, inside waters generally from a southerly direction, 15 to 35, with seas as high as 7 feet there in the Lynn Canal area. Outside waters, winds generally from a westerly direction, 25 to 30, with seas as high as 25 feet. So look for a small craft advisory there on Saturday. And then for Sunday, inside waters, winds generally from a southerly direction, 15 to 25, with seas as high as 9 feet. So look for a small craft advisory there in the southern end on Sunday. And then for the outside waters, winds generally from a southeasterly direction, 40 up to 40, with seas as high as 17 feet. For the south central area in the Gulf, looking at winds generally from a northerly direction, 20 to 40, with seas as high as 17 feet. So I'll look for small craft or gales there on Saturday. And then for the Cook Inlet region, winds generally from a northerly direction, 10 to 45, with seas as high as 11 feet there in the Kamishak Bay region. So look for gales there on Saturday. And then for Sunday, for the Gulf region, winds generally from an easterly direction, 40 to 45, with seas as high as 19 feet. So look for gales there on Sunday. And then for the Cook Inlet region, winds generally from the north at 25 to 40, with seas as high as 17 feet there in the Kamishak Bay region. So again, look for gales or small craft advisory there on Sunday. For Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island for Saturday, looking for winds out of the northwest around Kodiak Island, 25 to 30, with seas as high as 15 feet. Southside Alaska Peninsula, winds generally from a northeasterly easterly direction at 45 with seas as high as 11 feet, so look for gales there on Saturday. And then for north side Alaska Peninsula, winds generally from a northeasterly direction, 35 to 45 with seas as high as 11 feet, so small craft or gales there on Saturday. And then for Sunday around Kodiak Island, winds generally from a southwesterly direction, 40-45 with seas as high as 22 feet. So look for gales there on Sunday. And then for the south side of the Alaska Peninsula, winds generally from a southeasterly direction up to 35 with seas as high as 21 feet. So small craft advisory there likely on Sunday. And then for the north side of the Alaska Peninsula, winds generally from an easterly direction, 40 to 45 with seas as high as 16 feet. For Saturday's marine forecast, let's see here, we got anywhere between 35 and 55 knots coming from basically an easterly direction with seas as high as 28 feet, so look for storm force winds there on Saturday. And then for Sunday, winds calm down quite a bit, but likely in the small craft or gale category with winds generally from a northeasterly direction, 25 to 40 with seas as high as 24 feet out there between Kiska and Shemya. For Saturday's marine forecast for West Coast, looking at winds generally from a northerly direction, 15 to 45 there around St. Paul and St. George, the Pribilofs, with seas as high as 16 feet there. And then for Sunday, looking at winds generally from the northeasterly direction, 30 to 50 with seas as high as 22 feet near the ice edge there. So look for small craft or gales and maybe even storm there on Sunday. For Saturday's marine forecast for the Arctic coast, for the Beaufort Sea coast, winds generally from a easterly direction 10 to 15 down through the Chukchi Sea, winds generally from the west at 20, wind down through the Bering Strait, winds generally from a variable direction 20 to 25. And then for Sunday along the Beaufort Sea coast, winds generally from the west at 20 to 30, and then down through the Chukchi Sea coast, winds generally from a northwesterly direction 15 to 20, and then down through the Bering Strait, winds generally from the north 25 to 45. And then for the surface map tonight, looking at that 981 millibar low in the Gulf of Alaska, occluder front triple point with moderate to heavy rain along the coastal areas of the Gulf, snow showers further inland along coastal mountains and over into the southern mainland. And some of those snow showers extend into the interior. Ice fog along the Arctic coast, and that low out there in the Aleutians, 971 millibar low, with mixed precipitation through much of the Bering Sea and Aleutians.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.